So that the very idea of sex or gender is fluid is a complete fiction, but it's an incredibly dangerous one. It's another thing altogether to impress those decisions upon the minds of innocent children, right? Growing up, children must learn what is real from what is magic. Telling a young boy that he may wake up tomorrow as a girl is incredibly destructive, which we as adults have a responsibility to put a stop to. Some very thoughtful observers describe transgenderism now increasingly as a cult or a social neuroses. What is frightening is that it's a neuroses that's been embraced by our entire system of public education, at least in California, but it comes with a terrible cost. The lifelong emotional toll of living a lie. I encourage you to go visit the Heritage Foundation and look at its videos on former transgenders coming out. These are adults who medically transgendered decades ago and are now sounding the alarm at how terrible their decision was. In America, the rate of suicide attempts among transgender individuals is 9 times the general population. It's heartbreaking. But the reason the promoters of AB 329 tell us is because these people are made to feel marginalized. They're bullied. It's not good for their self-esteem. Sweden, however, is arguably the most transgender-affirming nation on earth. Yet a study in 2011 found the rate of suicides among surgically gender-affirmed adults to be, get this, 19 times greater than the general population, refuting the idea that completing the transgender process leads to peace of mind. By contrast, children with gender dysphoria who are allowed to experience natural puberty will come to accept their gender sex in adulthood by 61 to 98% if they're just left alone. 61 to 98% of the time. Now, some of the effects of gender identity, this cult, would be comedic if they weren't so terrible. A mixed martial arts league allowed a man named Fallon Fox to fight as a female simply because he identified as one. Have you heard this story? The consequence, Fox sent Tamika Brents, a female, to the hospital with a broken skull and concussion. Brents needed seven surgical staples to bind her wounds. A trained fighter herself, she said she had never been so overpowered in her life. Increasing numbers of young women are now no longer competing in sports because men who identify as women are entering the sports and winning all the competition. Ladies and gentlemen, where does this end? If we accept that one's subjective identity overcomes observable, empirical facts, then what's to stop us from applying the same logic to other arenas of life, like one's race, your ethnicity? What about your academic accomplishment? What about your net worth? Imagine this conversation. You're on the telephone, you're trying to get a mortgage loan. And the bank officer said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schneider, you only have a FICO score of 400. I'm not going to be able to give you the loan." And my response being, "Well, you're a FICO bigot. You're FICO-phobic. I self-identify with a FICO score of 800. Therefore, you have to give me that loan, and I'm going to enforce it by the rule of law." What's the difference between that allegory and what we're seeing in our public schools today? Absolutely none. The fact that we would never consider such things shows the absurdity of the gender identity edifice that the California Department of Education is now teaching all our kids.